A sharp crack echoed through courtroom 14, the kind of sound that didn't belong inside a federal courthouse. For a moment, no one understood what they'd heard, until every head turned toward the defense table and saw the thin metal folder lying on the floor, its contents scattered like wounded birds. At the center of it all sat Alexis Monroe, her hands trembling slightly, her eyes fixed on the empty chair beside her. Her attorney had just walked out. No explanation. No apology. He simply rose when Judge Alden stepped in, whispered a few words about an unavoidable conflict, and vanished through the side door as if fleeing a burning house. The judge stared at the abandoned chair, bewildered, then narrowed his gaze at Alexis. "Ms. Monroe, do you have replacement counsel?" His voice was calm, but beneath it lay the quiet threat of a clock running out. Alexis didn't answer. She couldn't. The air in her lungs felt heavy, sand thick, immovable. She had fought corporations, investors, disgruntled partners, but never this kind of silence. She folded her hands together, trying to keep them from shaking, but even that small gesture betrayed her. A few jurors noticed. One woman in the back row lowered her eyes, as if witnessing something intimate and painful she shouldn't see. And then a voice, low, steady, unexpected, broke the stillness. "You can't proceed without representation, Your Honor." It came from the far edge of the courtroom, where a man in a dark maintenance jacket stood beside a yellow mop bucket. Elliot Harper, 52. Lean build, quiet manner, a face carved by years of night shifts and hard choices. Most people walked past him without seeing him. He blended into hallways the way a shadow blends into dusk. But now in this room, tense with judgment, he held himself straighter than usual. Judge Alden frowned. "Mr. Harper." This is not the time. Elliot stepped forward. Not bold, not reckless, just deliberate, as if pulled into place by something larger than himself. "I'm not speaking as a lawyer," he said, meeting the judge's eyes without flinching. "I'm speaking as a court employee who knows the rules. She cannot stand alone against a corporate prosecution team." Several attorneys at the prosecution table exchanged amused glances, but the judge didn't look amused. He looked irritated, then curious, then slightly cautious, as if trying to remember whether Harper's name meant anything from years past. Alexis turned toward the voice. For a moment, she studied him like she might study a data graph she couldn't quite interpret. He had kind eyes, steady eyes, but also something distant, as if a door inside him had been locked for many years and only now creaked open. Judge Alden exhaled. "Ms. Monroe, do you need time to secure counsel?" Alexis opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The lawsuit, the accusations, the endless articles painting her as reckless, greedy, careless. They had already drained her dry. Now this abandonment in the very room where truth was supposed to matter. Elliot brushed past the railing and slowly crouched beside her fallen documents, gathering them with surprising care. He didn't touch her, didn't crowd her, only spoke in a voice meant for her alone. "You don't deserve to be cornered like this," he murmured. "Ask for a continuance." She stared at him. "Why do you care?" He paused a flicker, crossing his features. Something like old guilt or old loyalty or both. "Because I know what it's like to be pushed off the edge by people who think they can buy the ground under your feet." Before she could question him, Judge Alden cleared his throat. "Ms. Monroe, your answer." Alexis rose. Her voice cracked once, just once, before she steadied it. Your Honor, I request a continuance to obtain new representation. The prosecutor, a tall woman with a precise smile, stood immediately. The government opposes. This case has been delayed more than enough already, and Ms. Monroe had every opportunity to retain proper counsel. Judge Alden considered her argument annoyance, tugging at the corners of his mouth. Prosecutor Gray, the court is aware of the timeline, but the circumstances are unusual. A brief recess may be warranted. Gray leaned forward, voice smooth as glass. Your Honor, respectfully, we must avoid giving the impression that Ms. Monroe is being granted special treatment. Elliot's jaw tensed. He straightened slowly, turning his gaze toward Gray. Not angry, not confrontational, but piercing. Almost too piercing for someone wearing a maintenance badge. Special treatment, he asked quietly. She was abandoned. The courtroom rustled. People shifted. Someone coughed. Gray's eyes flicked to Elliot with faint irritation. And who exactly are you? Before Elliot could respond. Judge Alden lifted a hand. Mr. Harper is a long-time employee of this courthouse, and last I recall he completed significant legal training prior to his role here. A beat of silence. Gray blinked, thrown off balance. Alexis's breath caught. The judge turned back to Alexis. You have 1 week. Court is adjourned until then. The gavel struck. Sharp, final. A reprieve carved from the edge of defeat. As spectators filtered out, Alexis gathered her papers. Elliot offered the folder he'd reassembled. She hesitated, then took it. Thank you. She said the words soft but sincere. Don't thank me, Elliot replied. Just use the time well. He turned to leave, but a thin man in a grey suit, someone Alexis hadn't noticed before, watched him from the back of the courtroom. The man's expression was unreadable, but his eyes tracked Elliot with unsettling precision, like he recognized him, or remembered something about him that no one else did. Alexis felt a prickle at the back of her neck. Do you know him? She asked quietly. Elliot didn't look back. I used to. The way he said it made her pulse tighten. There was history there, deep, buried, and dangerous. But before she could ask more, the man in the grey suit stepped out through the side door, disappearing into the courthouse corridors with the same silence Elliot himself carried. Only one difference: the stranger's silence felt like a threat. Alexis looked at Elliot again, studying the lines in his face, the caution in his voice, the gravity in his posture. He wasn't just a court janitor. He wasn't even just a man with unfinished business. He was someone who had walked through fire once, and from the look in his eyes, the fire wasn't done with him yet. Outside, the hallway lights hummed with a low electric buzz. The air felt colder than before, as if the building itself sensed the shift. Like this case was no longer simply about contracts or technology. Something older had awakened. Something heavier. And Elliot Harper, quiet, overlooked, forgotten, had just stepped back into a world that thought it had buried him forever. Alexis didn't know it yet, but the man who picked up her fallen folder was about to change the course of her life and his own in ways neither of them were ready to face. The courthouse cafeteria was nearly empty by mid-afternoon, lit by the pale winter sun, bleeding through tall windows, streaked with old condensation. Elliot Harper sat alone at a corner table, the same one he'd used for years, a lukewarm cup of black coffee cupped between his hands. The chair across from him had always stayed empty. Today it didn't. Alexis Monroe stood there, hesitant, holding her coat by the collar, as if unsure how close she should stand to him. Her eyes were clearer now, not as frantic as in the courtroom, but still shadowed with exhaustion. "May I sit?" Elliot nodded. She slid into the chair, smoothing out the crease in her sleeve, as though that tiny motion could steady her world. She spoke first. "I didn't get to thank you properly. What you did in there, you didn't have to." Elliot kept his eyes on the coffee. "You don't owe me anything." "That's not what it feels like," she said softly. "I was sinking." "You were blindsided," Elliot corrected. "It happens more often in this place than people think." The cafeteria hum filled the quiet between them. Vending machines, buzzing trays, clattering in the distance, the faint echo of a judge's voice drifting from a nearby hallway. Alexis leaned in slightly, her brow furrowing with a mixture of frustration and suspicion. "Why did my attorney walk out? I hired him. I paid him. I vetted his firm." Elliot didn't answer immediately. He studied her expression, the way her jaw clenched the flicker of vulnerability she kept trying to hide. Then he spoke carefully. "Sometimes people walk away because they're afraid, or because someone told them to." Her pulse quickened. She heard the weight in his voice, the unspoken experience behind it. She whispered, "Is that what happened to you?" For the briefest moment, Elliot's eyes lifted to hers. Something old and raw flickered across his face before he buried it again. "My past doesn't matter right now. You need representation. And who do you think will take my case?" Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with simmering anger. "Every firm in this city knows Renova Energy has money, lobbyists' influence. I'm one woman with a research lab and a damaged reputation. You have facts," Elliot said. "They can twist facts. They already did." Elliot leaned back, the chair creaking under him. "Then you need someone who knows how the twisting works." She looked at him sharply. "Are you implying you do?" Before he could answer, a soft, metallic click echoed from the cafeteria entrance. The man in the grey suit stood just inside, pretending to examine a vending machine. His posture was too still, his attention too focused. Elliot's shoulders tightened. Alexis followed Elliot's gaze. "You know him." "I used to work for people who employed his kind," Elliot said, voice low. "Corporate investigators. They don't follow cases. They follow people." Alexis's breath caught. "He's following me." Elliot shook his head once. "He's following both of us." The man slipped a coin into the machine, pretending to decide between snacks. But he wasn't looking at the machine. He was watching their reflections in the glass. Elliot rose slowly. "We should talk somewhere else." Alexis nodded, grabbing her coat. They walked toward the exit, their footsteps echoing in sync. But as they passed the vending machine, the man finally spoke. "Mr. Harper?" he said. His tone was polite enough to pass for friendly, but his eyes remained cold. "Long time." Elliot didn't turn. "Not long enough." Alexis felt a chill curl down her spine. She stopped only when Elliot placed a hand lightly on her elbow, guiding her through the door into the quieter hallway beyond. Once outside, she exhaled hard. "What was that?" Trouble, Elliot murmured. "The kind that doesn't introduce itself until it has to." A janitorial cart rattled by, pushed by an older woman humming a gospel tune. The contrast made Alexis's heart squeeze. This courthouse with its polished floors and crumbling humanity felt like a world balancing on the edge of truth and something darker. Elliot gestured toward the far staircase. "Come on, there's a place we can talk." They climbed the stairs to the third-floor mezzanine, a quiet overlook where sunlight spilled through stained glass panels and washed the floor in muted amber. Elliot stopped beside a bench and turned toward her. "You asked why your attorney walked out," he said. "I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you how these things work. Powerful corporations don't always win because they're right. They win because they're loud. They win because no one wants to stand in their way. And you, she asked. Do you want to stand in their way? Elliot's jaw tightened. I've seen enough, done enough, lost enough. I know how far these people go when profit's on the line. What did they do to you? He shook his head. Later. She stepped closer, searching his eyes. You know something important about this case, don't you? He didn't respond, but silence was answer enough. She sank onto the bench, burying her face briefly in her hands. I'm so tired, she whispered. They've taken everything. My lab, my staff, my credibility. Elliot knelt slightly to catch her gaze. They haven't taken your work. They haven't taken the truth. They can bury the truth, she said bitterly. Only if you let them. His voice was so steady, so certain, that she felt a strange warmth rise in her chest. But before she could speak, a new sound drifted through the mezzanine, a faint buzz. Elliot's phone. He glanced at the screen. His expression shifted. What is it, she asked. It's from Megan, he said slowly. She wants me to call her. Said it's urgent. Your daughter. He nodded. What does she do? Data compliance for a consulting firm, he said. She knows how to read documents most people ignore. And she's helping you help me. Not yet, Elliot said, slipping the phone back into his pocket. But she might. She's better at seeing patterns than I ever was. Alexis swallowed. Patterns like what? Like who benefits if you fall, Elliot said. Or who's been stirring things in the shadows. She looked away, staring at the sunlit stained glass. I feel like I'm fighting a storm with bare hands. You're not fighting alone anymore, Elliot said quietly. The words hung between them, warm and dangerous. A shadow moved at the far end of the mezzanine. The man in the grey suit again, standing watching motionless. Elliot straightened. We need to go. Alexis rose quickly. Where somewhere they won't expect. He led her down the back staircase, past old photographs of judges long retired. The smell of oiled wood and old paper filled the narrow stairwell, grounding them in something older, sturdier. At the first-floor landing, Elliot paused. There's a retired attorney I know. Someone who owes me a favor. She might take your case. Alexis frowned. Why would she owe you a favor? Because I kept her from losing something she cared about. He said simply. What before he could answer, the door behind them creaked. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The grey-suited man's voice drifted down the stairs. Mr. Harper, you really shouldn't involve yourself. Elliot turned, shoulders squared, eyes cold. And you should tell your boss I'm not afraid of him. The man smiled, small, thin, unsettling. You were afraid once. Elliot stepped closer. That was a lifetime ago. The man's eyes shifted to Alexis. Ms. Monroe, you should consider settling. Quietly. It would spare you consequences. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Is that a threat? It's advice, the man said. Elliot grabbed Alexis's arm. We're done here. He pushed open the stairwell door, guiding her into the chilly afternoon air outside the courthouse. Sirens howled somewhere distant. Pigeons scattered from the steps. The grey sky pressed low, heavy with unshed snow. Alexis pulled in a shaky breath. Elliot, who exactly are you? He met her gaze, the weight of an unspoken history between them. Someone who's tired of watching good people get crushed. And him? That man, Elliot's jaw hardened. He works for someone who believes the law is a tool. I used to know his methods. I used to know his world. She stared at him, realization dawning slowly. You weren't just a paralegal. No, he said, quietly. I wasn't? He turned away, scanning the street, calculating something she couldn't see. Come on, Elliot said. We have work to do. And they've already decided you're dangerous. Dangerous, she asked. For people who fear the truth, he said, walking into the wind. Yes. She followed him. Because for the first time in months, someone wasn't just defending her. He was preparing for a battle she didn't know existed. Snow began to fall before they reached the parking lot, thin flakes drifting sideways in the wind, dissolving the moment they touched the concrete. Alexis wrapped her coat tighter around her shoulders, while Elliot scanned the quiet street with the alertness of someone who expected danger to hide in ordinary places. His old sedan sat alone at the far end of the lot, its faded paint glinting weakly under the grey sky. He unlocked it with a muted click, then hesitated before opening the door. "Get in," he murmured. "And keep your head down for a moment." She obeyed, sliding into the passenger seat, lowering herself until she could barely see over the dashboard. Elliot circled the car once, slow and deliberate eyes, narrowing at the fresh tire marks cutting across the slush. Too close, too rushed. Someone had been waiting. He got in and shut the door softly, not the careless slam of routine. Alexis felt her chest tighten. "Elliot, what did he mean by 'you were afraid'?" Once he didn't respond. His hands, steady even during a courtroom crisis, showed the slightest tremor as he turned the key. "Seatbelt," he said. His voice was calm, but too calm, the kind that carried a warning. They pulled out of the lot. Chicago blurred around them in streaks of wet concrete salt stains and headlights. Elliot drove with disciplined caution. No sudden turns, no predictable route. Only after a few minutes did he speak. "People like him don't just show up," he said quietly. "They're sent by Renover." Elliot shook his head. "No. Renover's just the face. Someone else is moving behind them. Someone who knows my history." She looked at him. "Is your history tied to my case?" A long breath escaped him. Not directly. But the same group that wants you silent once wanted something from me. And when I didn't give it, they made sure I wouldn't be useful to anyone. What did they want? Information, he said. Access, influence, a foot inside the legal system. I refused, and my career ended before it began. Alexis felt anger rise, quiet but fierce. "So they destroyed you." "They tried to." He turned onto a quieter road, lined with bare trees scratching at the sky. But I didn't go quietly enough for their liking. She studied him, seeing him more clearly now, not just a janitor, not just a man with a broken past, but someone carrying scars carved by powerful hands. "Elliot, why tell me now? Because whatever you're caught in, it's bigger than a lawsuit. And if I don't tell you the truth, you won't understand why I'm helping you." She considered this, letting the weight of it settle, then nodded. "Then help me understand." He glanced at her. For the first time, she saw hesitation, like he was peeling open a locked memory. "Years ago, when I was still training, a corporate intelligence group approached me. They recruited inside law schools looking for students willing to bend ethics in exchange for influence. I declined. That alone should have been the end of it. But I'd already seen too much. I reported them. Quietly, through proper channels. And the investigation vanished, and so did the evidence. A senior official pulled me aside, told me I'd better learn the difference between being right and being safe. The words chilled her. She heard the old hurt in his voice, the bitterness heated by memory. After that, he continued, doors closed. Job offers pulled. Background checks flagged for reasons no one would explain. One morning, even my mentor stopped returning my calls. Alexis swallowed. "So you took the job at the courthouse. It was the one place I could still be close to the law without being in the line of fire." She turned her gaze toward the window, watching snow gather at the edges of the glass. And now I see familiar patterns, he said. I see the same people circling, same tactics, same shadows. She exhaled slowly. Because of my research. Yes, Elliot said softly. Your technology threatens billions of dollars. Whoever stands to lose won't give up quietly. But I didn't steal anything, she whispered. Everything I built came from my own work. I believe you, he said. But they're not trying to prove you guilty. They're trying to make you tired enough to stop fighting. A silence fell heavy and unspoken. Then her phone buzzed. She flinched at the sound. Elliot's reaction was sharper, eyes narrowing, hand hovering near her elbow. It's just my phone, she said. He shook his head. Let me see. She hesitated, then handed it over. The screen showed a blocked number and a short message. You're running out of people to trust. Elliot exhaled through his nose. Don't reply. Don't delete it. We'll give it to your new attorney. Is this what they did to you? She asked. Worse, Elliot murmured. And quieter. For a while, neither spoke. The car heater hummed low, fogging the edges of the windshield. The streets thinned as they moved toward Ravenswood, where older homes stood close together, under heavy branches dusted with snow. Elliot parked beside a narrow walkway, leading to a dark blue townhouse. Whose place is this? She asked. Sarah Whitman, he said. Retired attorney. Smart. Tough. Too stubborn to be bought. You're sure? He met her eyes. I trust her. And that's rare. They stepped out into the freezing air, their breaths rising in soft grey clouds. The walkway creaked with the weight of old boards, and a warm light flickered inside the house, casting shadows against lace curtains. Elliot knocked twice. A moment passed before the door opened just a crack. An elderly face appeared, sharp eyes, framed by silver hair pulled into a loose knot. Harper, she said, voice surprised, not entirely pleased. You only knock on my door when the world's ending. This is Alexis Monroe, he said. She needs help. Sarah's brow arched, examining Alexis with quick, meticulous attention. You're the one in the energy case. Yes, Alexis said. And I didn't do what they're accusing me of. Of course you didn't, Sarah replied. In my experience, innocent people shake when they say it. Guilty people rehearse it. She stepped aside. Come in. The warmth inside hit them instantly, carrying the scent of old books, pine cleaner, and something simmering on the stove. Sarah gestured toward the living room. Sit. Harper closed the curtains. Alexis lowered herself onto the couch while Sarah retrieved a folder already sitting atop a stack of legal briefs. I've been following your case, Sarah said. Not because of you, no offense, but because of who's on the other side. Alexis leaned forward. Renova Sarah gave a humorless smile. Renova is just a logo stamped on a monster. The real fight is behind them. Old money, old alliances, old lies. Elliot watched her carefully, hands clasped behind his back. Sarah looked at him. Did you tell her some of it? Some won't be enough, Sarah said bluntly. If she's going to survive this, she needs all of it. Alexis felt her pulse quicken. All of what Sarah sat down across from her, folding her hands. Ms. Monroe, you're not being targeted because you invented something valuable. You're being targeted because you touched something someone else believes they own. My research is mine, Alexis said, heat rising in her voice. I built it, and that, Sarah said softly, is exactly why they're afraid of you. Elliot spoke then, voice low. Show her the list. Sarah hesitated, then opened her folder. Alexis stared at the names typed on the page. She recognized none of them. Yet the more she read, the colder she felt. Who are these people? she whispered. Sarah's voice dropped. The ones who don't lose. Ever. Elliot watched her face closely. Now you understand why your attorney walked out. Alexis pressed a hand to her forehead. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. What do I do? Elliot answered before Sarah could. You fight with people who won't leave. Like you? She asked. This time Elliot didn't look away. Yes, he said simply. Like me. Snow tapped against the window. The house creaked softly, settling into the cold. And somewhere far away, Alexis knew the man in the grey suit was reporting back to someone who had already decided she was a threat. Inside the warm living room, surrounded by strangers becoming allies, she felt the first spark of something she hadn't felt in months. Defiance. And beneath it, rising, slowly, dangerously, hope. A hard gust of wind rattled the window panes just as Sarah Whitman finished reading the last line of the document aloud. The room fell into a silence so thick it seemed to press against the walls. Alexis stared at the names on the list again, her fingers tightening around the edge of the folder. The letters blurred slightly. Not from tears, she refused to cry in front of anyone, but from the weight of understanding sinking into her bones. These weren't executives or shareholders. They were power brokers, the kind of people who moved markets with a phone call, the kind who didn't lose, because losing was never allowed to be an option. They can't possibly all be involved, she whispered. Sarah's expression didn't soften. They don't need to be. One is enough. But when several of them align, what you get is pressure on every institution connected to your life, your job, your attorney, your research, grants, even your friends. Elliot watched her carefully. That's why you're not imagining the hostility. It's orchestrated. Alexis shut the folder. Why would they care so much about me? Sarah leaned back in her chair. Because you proved something they hoped wasn't possible. Faster, cleaner energy without dependence on materials they already control. You made the future less profitable for their present. Alexis swallowed hard. She had always known her work mattered. She just hadn't realized it threatened giants. A kettle hissed from the kitchen. Sarah rose, headed toward the stove with the steady, deliberate steps of someone who had weathered storms before. Tea helps people think straight, she muttered. And right now, all of us need to think. While she was gone, Elliot moved toward the window, parting the curtain with 2 fingers. The street outside looked quiet, empty, except for snow piling along the curbs. But he didn't relax. Alexis saw it in the set of his shoulders. Is he still out there? She asked softly. Not him, Elliot said, but someone will be. She shivered. The living room felt warm, but she couldn't shake the cold growing beneath her ribs. Elliot, what happens if Sarah takes my case? Will she be targeted too? Probably, he said, honestly. Sarah returned before Alexis could respond, setting 2 mugs of tea on the table. I'm too old to be intimidated, Sarah said, matter-of-factly, and too stubborn to retire quietly. If I'm going down, it won't be because someone told me to step aside. Alexis managed a thin smile. So you'll represent me. Sarah's eyes flicked to Elliot, then back to Alexis. Yes. But we do this my way, carefully, strategically. Nothing rash. A distant thump shook the air so faint they all paused. Sarah frowned. Probably the neighbor's snowblower, she said. But Elliot stepped toward the front of the house instantly. He opened the door and scanned the porch. Nothing. Just heavy snow swirling through the dim street lights. But the tire tracks across the curb were fresh. Too fresh. He closed the door slowly. We should move to another room, he said. Back hallway. No windows? Sarah didn't question him. She gestured toward the narrow hallway off the kitchen. They gathered there, the cramped space, lined with framed photos of Sarah's life, her wedding 40 years ago, her swearing-in ceremony as an attorney, a faded picture of her daughter holding a newborn grandchild. Alexis felt like an intruder, stepping into someone else's memories. But then, she noticed something in Sarah's posture, an old steeliness, a readiness that didn't match her age. "You were a prosecutor," Alexis said quietly. Federal Sarah replied, "Back when cases meant something, back before money started rewiring the system." Elliot leaned against the opposite wall, arms crossed. Alexis watched him for a moment, noticing details she hadn't seen before, how his eyes tracked every sound, how his hands remained relaxed but alert, how he positioned himself slightly between her and the front of the house. Not a habit, a reflex. She spoke softly. "You weren't just a student they tried to recruit, were you?" His silence confirmed it before he did. "I did some work for them," he said finally. "Small jobs. Nothing illegal but enough to understand what they were becoming. I left before they asked for anything I couldn't live with." Alexis felt her breath stall. "And they punished you for leaving." "They punished me for knowing too much," he said. "People like that don't trust clean exits." Before she could respond, the quiet house vibrated again, this time unmistakably a car engine outside, not the steady idle of a neighbor arriving home, but a low hum lingering too long. Sarah moved to the kitchen window and peered through a slit in the curtain. "Black SUV," she murmured, windows tinted. Elliot stepped beside her. Engines running. Alexis felt her pulse race. "Do they know we're here?" Maybe Elliot said. Or maybe they're watching the street. But they don't sit in the cold without a reason. Sarah didn't blink. "We don't panic. We don't assume the worst. But we prepare for it," Elliot added. He turned to Alexis. "Is your location publicly known?" "Only my apartment," she said. "Not here." "Then they're watching me," Elliot murmured. Or Sarah. Sarah gave a dry laugh. "Let them watch. They'll get bored. Nothing here but arthritis and an old case backlog." Elliot didn't smile. "They're patient," he said. "They don't need to act. They just need us to know they're near." For several minutes they stood in the narrow hallway, listening. Snow fell harder, plastering the windows. The engine outside finally cut off. The silence that followed was more unnerving than the noise. Sarah turned to Alexis. "Tell me exactly what Renova claimed you stole." Alexis took a breath. "A thermodynamic conversion model. One I spent 11 years building. It increases energy yield without relying on rare earth metals." "Which they want to control," Elliot said. "Which they already control," Sarah corrected. Alexis nodded. "The day before the lawsuit was filed, someone broke into my lab." "What did they take?" Sarah asked. "Nothing," Alexis whispered. "But someone touched my workstation. Files were rearranged. Logins I didn't recognize." Sarah exchanged a look with Elliot. "They were mapping your system," Elliot said. "Preparing to plant something later." Alexis felt sick. "Sarah," she whispered, "can they fabricate enough to win?" "They don't need to win," Sarah said. "They just need you to give up." Alexis pressed her hands together to stop them from shaking. "Then I won't." Elliot stepped closer. "Good. Because fighting them will cost you sleep time, relationships, maybe even safety." She met his eyes, steady now. "I'm not alone. Not anymore." His expression softened for a fleeting second, then sharpened as headlights flashed across the window. Another car, slower this time. Then it passed. Sarah exhaled. "Harper, can you stay the night?" Just to be safe, I'll stay, he said. At least until that SUV leaves for good. Alexis hesitated. Should I go? No, Sarah said firmly. Leaving now would draw attention. You stay until morning. They returned to the living room. The atmosphere had changed, not fear exactly, but awareness, as if the house itself knew it was being watched. Alexis sat beside the fireplace, rubbing her hands together for warmth. Elliot remained near the window, the outline of his figure dark against the glow of the street lamp. She studied him, sensing something in the way he held himself, something wounded but unbroken. Elliot, she said softly, why are you risking yourself for me? He didn't turn. Because I didn't stand up when I should have once, and someone paid the price. Sarah looked at him sharply, but said nothing. Alexis whispered, who Elliot's answer was a quiet cut through the still air. My brother. The fire crackled, the wind howled, and everything in Alexis's world shifted. She understood then this wasn't just her battle. It was his redemption, and he would rather burn than walk away again. The fire had burned low by the time Elliot finally sat down, though he didn't relax. He leaned forward in the armchair across from Alexis, elbows on his knees, staring into the embers, as if searching for something buried there. Alexis waited, sensing the heaviness in him, the strain behind his controlled breathing. Sarah remained in the doorway, arms folded her presence, steady and grounding. Your brother Alexis said quietly. What happened to him, Elliot didn't lift his eyes. He trusted the wrong people, he said. And he trusted me to protect him. Sarah shifted her weight. Elliot, you don't have to. She deserves to know, he said, still staring into the fire. If she stays in this case, she needs to understand the cost. Alexis felt the cold draft creeping under the door, heard the faint hum of the furnace kicking on, but none of it mattered. The world seemed to narrow to Elliot's voice. My brother Daniel was 3 years younger, Elliot began. Bright. Better than me at everything. I studied law, he studied applied physics. Brilliant mind. Too brilliant. People noticed. He paused, swallowing hard. The same organization that tried to recruit me approached him too. But they didn't ask him to bend ethics. They asked him to build something. Alexis felt a knot tighten at the base of her throat. What kind of something? A module, Elliot said. A small device with the ability to bypass digital firewalls. They claimed it was for security testing. Daniel believed them. He always believed the best in people. He rubbed his forehead fingers, dragging across worn skin. I told him not to trust them. I told him they were using him. But he said I was just being paranoid. He said not everything was a conspiracy. Was he wrong? Alexis whispered. Elliot's silence answered for him. 6 months after he finished the prototype, Elliot continued there was a leak, a breach of a federal system, national security alarms everywhere, and the device used looked an awful lot like the one Daniel had designed. Alexis covered her mouth with her hand. They blamed him. Yes, Elliot said. Evidence appeared out of nowhere. Files he never touched. Communications he never sent. His career evaporated overnight. He was stripped of everything before he could even understand what had happened. He leaned back, eyes distant. He came to me, asked me to help clear his name. But by then I was already marked. Anything I did would only make him look guiltier. His voice tightened. He spiraled. Depression. Isolation. One morning he left his apartment and drove north. They found his car by the lake. He wasn't in it. Alexis felt the air freeze inside her lungs. She whispered, Elliot, I'm so sorry. He closed his eyes briefly. Sorry doesn't fix the world, and it doesn't bring him back. Sarah stepped closer. You survived something that destroyed entire careers, and you're still standing. Don't forget that. Standing, Elliot muttered, isn't the same as fighting. Alexis looked at him, truly seeing him now, a man carrying the ghost of a brother he couldn't save, and a truth no one would believe. Is that why you stepped in for me? She asked softly. Because you saw Daniel in me? No, Elliot said, meeting her eyes. Because I saw the people who destroyed him circling you, and I refused to let them take another life. Before Alexis could respond, a sharp knock shattered the fragile stillness. 3 heavy raps against the front door. Sarah froze mid-step. Elliot was already on his feet. He moved like a man who had rehearsed danger his whole life, silent and precise. Stay here, he whispered. Don't move. But Alexis rose. Elliot, stay behind me. He approached the door slowly, checking the side window through the thin crack between the curtains. A figure stood on the porch, dark coat, shoulders hunched against the cold. Snow clung to the brim of a knit cap, pulled low. Not the grey-suited man, someone shorter, broader, a stranger. Who is it? Sarah called, her voice controlled but tense. Delivery, the man said, his voice muffled by the door but not enough to hide the unease beneath it. For who, Elliot asked. A pause. Too long, Whitman, the man replied. No first name, no courtesy. Leave it on the step, Elliot said. The man hesitated. Signature needed. Sarah shook her head sharply from across the room. I'm not expecting anything, she whispered. Elliot, don't open it. Elliot's hand hovered near the knob, not touching, yet just listening, watching, measuring. Snow gathered against the threshold. The man shifted his weight boots, scraping on the wooden planks. Then he spoke again, quieter this time. Harper, I know you're in there. Alexis's heart slammed against her ribs. Sarah closed the distance with surprising speed for her age and pulled Alexis behind her. Elliot stood very still. Too still. What do you want? He asked. A conversation, the man said, face to face. Go away, Elliot said. We're done with your warnings. This isn't a warning, the man replied. It's an offer. Elliot stepped closer, voice low. No deals. You haven't heard it yet. Sarah whispered, Don't talk to him, Harper. Elliot ignored her. I'm listening, he said through the door. The man exhaled. Walk away from this. Take her out of the city. Somewhere quiet. She disappears for a while. This whole mess goes dormant. You both get to breathe. Alexis felt heat rush through her. He wants me to run, she whispered. Elliot's jaw tightened. And if we don't, the man didn't hesitate. Then someone else will finish what your brother couldn't. The blow landed deep. Alexis gasped. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Elliot didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. Get off the porch. I'm trying to help you, the man insisted. Walk away, before she becomes another project file. Elliot's tone changed, cold, sharp, lethal. Go, or I'll make you go. A quiet laugh drifted through the door. You're still the same, always choosing the losing side. Footsteps retreated through the snow, steady and unhurried. Elliot didn't move until the sound faded. Then he rested his hand on the doorframe just for balance. Sarah hurried to him. Are you all right? He straightened. He shouldn't know anything about Daniel. Not a detail. That means someone inside the old network is active again. Alexis stepped forward, her voice shaking. Elliot, does this mean I'm marked? He finished. Not yet. But they're watching you closely. Sarah locked the deadbolt. We need to contact someone we trust. Someone outside Chicago. Elliot nodded slowly. I know one person, but reaching him won't be easy. Alexis looked between them, her pulse still erratic. Who is he? Elliot hesitated, then answered. The only man who ever tried to expose them from the inside, and the one they buried before they finished burying me. Alexis whispered. Is he still alive? Elliot's expression darkened. If he is, he won't be for long, unless we find him first. Snow whipped against the windows. The fire snapped sharply in the grate, and somewhere beyond the walls in the dark, Chicago winter, unseen eyes were counting the minutes they had left. The storm thickened overnight, turning Chicago into a blur of white streets and muffled sirens. By early morning, Sarah's house felt trapped inside a snow globe, sealed off from the rest of the world. Elliot stood in the kitchen sleeves, rolled up, staring at a sheet of paper he'd spread across the table. A map. Lines drawn, names circled, notes scribbled in tight, controlled handwriting. Alexis entered quietly, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She hadn't slept more than a few hours, and her face showed it. But something in her had hardened, fear tempered into resolve. You've been up all night, she said softly. Elliot didn't look up. Couldn't sleep. Because of what he said, he didn't answer. Instead, he tapped a finger on a spot on the map. This is where I last saw him, the man who tried to expose them. What's his name? Alexis asked, stepping closer. Elliot hesitated, as if saying it out loud might draw danger through the walls. Jonas Hale. Sarah entered, then carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. Her silver hair was pulled back tight, her expression sharper than usual. Jonas Hale, she repeated. I haven't heard that name in more than a decade. Alexis blinked. You knew him. Everyone who worked serious cases knew him, Sarah said. He was fearless, brilliant, stubborn to the point of self-destruction. Elliot nodded once, and he knew how the network worked from the inside. If he's alive, Sarah added, handing Elliot a mug he won't surface unless we force him to. Alexis studied the 2 older figures, their guarded expressions, the unspoken history between them. Elliot and Sarah carried scars she couldn't yet see, scars shaped like battles fought in silence. Where would Jonas go? Alexis asked. He's not someone who blends in. People like him hide in motion, constant motion. Trucking routes, Elliot said. Freight lines. Temporary labor jobs. Places where they don't ask questions and don't keep records. Alexis felt a chill unrelated to the cold. So he vanished. He had to, Elliot said. After what he tried to reveal, no institution could protect him. Sarah poured herself coffee and leaned against the counter. The question isn't where he is. The question is how we draw him out without tipping off the people hunting him. Before Elliot could answer, a small vibration hummed from the table. His phone. One unread text from Megan. Call me now. Elliot grabbed the phone instantly, dialing with quick, tense movements. Alexis watched him pace the kitchen as the call connected. Meg, what's wrong? His voice changed deeper, protective, the soft edge reserved only for a daughter. A pause. His face darkened. What do you mean they visited the office? Another pause, longer. Did they ask about me or Alexis? Alexis's stomach tightened. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Elliot listened, jaw tight, one hand gripping the edge of the table. Meg, listen to me. Don't go back there. Not today. Pack a bag and stay at Aunt Lila's. I'll explain everything when I can. He hung up slowly. Alexis stepped closer. What happened? Elliot's voice was low. 2 men showed up at her workplace, asked questions about a case she never told anyone she was helping me with. Do they know she's your daughter? They know now, he said. He pressed a hand to his forehead. She's smart. She'll be fine. but this is moving faster than I expected." Sarah tapped the map. "Then we need Jonas more than ever. He's the only one who can confirm what group is involved and how deep they've sunk." Elliot straightened. "I know how to find him." Alexis frowned. "You said no one knew where he was. I'll find him the way he finds everyone else." Elliot picked up the map and folded it sharply. "We leave today." Alexis blinked. "Leave? Where are we going, South Haven?" Elliot said. "Lake Michigan route. Jonas used to work odd jobs at the marinas when he needed to disappear. They're seasonal, no paperwork." Sarah put down her coffee. "South Haven's 2 hours away." "Longer in the storm," Elliot said. "But it's our best chance." Alexis grabbed her coat. "Then let's go." But Sarah blocked her path. "Absolutely not. You're not going anywhere near an exposed rural shoreline while being watched. We can't stay here," Alexis argued. "That SUV is still out there." "Which is exactly why you're not going with him," Sarah insisted. "He draws them away while you stay protected." Elliot shook his head. "No." "She comes with me." Sarah's eyes widened. "Elliot, they're watching the courthouse. Her apartment are my old roots," he said. "But they don't know she's with me here. If I leave with her now before the plows clear the streets, we'll be ghosts." Sarah studied him. "You're asking me to choose between sense and trust." Elliot looked at Alexis. "I'm asking you to trust me." Alexis inhaled slowly. Something in Elliot's gaze, steady, haunted, resolute, eased the tightness in her chest. "I do," she said. Sarah shook her head, but didn't argue further. She moved to a drawer, pulled out a small set of keys, and tossed them to Elliot. "Take my car. Yours stands out too much." Elliot caught the keys. "Thank you." As they prepared to leave, Sarah placed a hand on Alexis's shoulder. "Listen to him. He may doubt everything else, but he never doubts how to survive." Alexis nodded. Outside, the storm bit at their faces. Sarah's old sedan sat under a blanket of snow, its windshield wipers frozen stiff. Elliot brushed it clean with his forearm movements, sharp and efficient. Alexis climbed into the passenger side, breath curling in the cold air as Elliot started the engine. The heater sputtered weakly, sending out uneven bursts of warmth. "Seatbelt," Elliot said. "It's already on," she replied. They pulled away from the curb, the tires crunching through fresh snow. Sarah watched from the porch, arms wrapped around herself, until the car disappeared into the shifting white. Miles passed in silence. Highway signs blurred. Snow thickened. Alexis finally spoke. "What if Jonas doesn't want to be found?" "He won't," Elliot said. "Not at first. Then how he always watches the news. Every courthouse story, every legal controversy. He tracks patterns like other people track weather." Elliot glanced at her. "Your case is big enough to pull him out whether he wants to stay hidden or not." "That sounds dangerous," she murmured. "It will be," he said simply. For an hour they drove through the storm, past skeletal trees, bowing beneath the weight of winter. Then, as they approached a service station off the highway, Elliot slowed. A man stood near the pumps, hood-up coat, thin hands shoved into his pockets despite the cold. He wasn't fueling a car. He wasn't waiting. He was watching, directly at them. "Is that no?" Elliot said. "Not Jonas." The man lifted a phone to his ear. A car, hidden behind the station, flicked its headlights twice. Elliot hit the gas. "Hold on." The sedan lurched forward, tires spinning before catching purchase. The car behind the station pulled out immediately. Alexis gripped the door handle. "They found us." "No," Elliot said tightly. "They followed me before they saw you." The pursuing car closed the gap, its front bumper nearly touching Sarah's rear fender. Alexis's breath caught. "Elliot, I see them." He jerked the wheel, veering onto an unplowed side road. Snow sprayed upward in thick arcs. The sedan fishtailed, regained traction, then lurched forward again. The chase car followed. Fast. Too fast. Alexis's pulse thundered. Are they trying to run us off the road? No, Elliot said. They're herding us. Toward what lake roads, he said. Empty, unpatrolled. Perfect for a disappearance. Alexis's voice cracked. We can't outrun them. We don't have to. He yanked the wheel left. The sedan skidded sideways into a narrow, tree-lined lane, barely visible beneath the snow. The chase car overshot, skidding past the opening before screeching to a halt. Elliot slammed the gas. The sedan shot down the hidden road. Alexis gasped as the branches scraped the windows like claws. Where does this lead? To a marina, Elliot said. Abandoned in winter. And that's better for Jonas. Elliot said darkly, it is. Snow swallowed the road behind them. The storm thickened. And in the distance beyond the skeletal trees and frozen shoreline, a faint light flickered. A lantern. A silhouette. Waiting. Alexis felt her breath catch. Is that him? Elliot didn't answer. But his hands tightened on the wheel. They were no longer being chased. They were being expected. The road narrowed until it became little more than a snow-buried path, winding through skeletal trees that clawed at the hood of the sedan. The storm softened the world into a white haze, but the glow ahead remained steady, a single lantern suspended from a pole near the frozen docks. Elliot slowed the car tires, crunching through untouched snow. No other tracks. No sign of the chase vehicle. No sign of anyone else. Alexis leaned forward, breath fogging the windshield. Why would anyone be out here, in this weather? Elliot didn't answer. He killed the engine and listened. The only sound was the wind sweeping across the ice. He stepped out, boots sinking into the powder, and motioned for her to follow. The cold hit like a slap. Alexis wrapped her coat tighter, glancing around the empty marina. Rows of sailboats hibernated under tarps, their masts creaking softly. A skeletal pier stretched into the lake, disappearing into swirling white. At the end of it stood a lone figure, tall and thin-coat, whipping in the wind. The lantern beside him swayed, casting long, flickering shadows. Alexis's voice dropped to a whisper. Elliot is that Jonas Elliot didn't reply. He simply walked forward each step, slow, deliberate, almost reverent. Alexis followed, boots sliding on the icy boards. As they approached, the figure at the end of the pier turned. The lantern illuminated a gaunt face, marked by deep lines and weary intelligence. His hair, once black, had faded into uneven streaks of silver. His eyes, sharp and restless, scanned them, landing on Elliot, with a flash of something between recognition and accusation. Harper Jonas Hale said softly, as if tasting the name after years of silence. I wondered how long before you dragged trouble to my doorstep again. Elliot exhaled relief, and tension coiled together. You knew we were coming. I knew someone was coming, Jonas replied. Storms like this don't bring visitors, only threats or ghosts. He studied Alexis with wary interest. Which one are you? I'm neither, she said, stepping forward. I'm someone who needs help. Jonas let out a dry laugh. Everyone who finds me needs help. No one ever brings solutions. Elliot moved between them slightly. Jonas, she's being targeted by the network. A shadow crossed Jonas's eyes. Fear or memory, Alexis couldn't tell. Who isn't, Jonas murmured. They've spent 20 years weaving themselves through every institution. Quiet, patient, rotting the foundations from underneath. Alexis took a breath, her words trembling. They're trying to destroy my work, my life. And I don't even know why. Jonas tilted his head, analyzing her the way a physicist might study an anomaly. You built something valuable, something that threatens their holdings. People like them don't tolerate disruption. You know who they are, Elliot said. Names, structure, leadership. Jonas's gaze sharpened. Why should I say anything to you? The last time you showed up, you nearly got me killed. Elliot flinched the first crack in his composure since she met him. I tried to help you, he said quietly. I warned you. Jonas stepped closer, breath visible in the cold. You warned me too late. Wind tore across the lake, rattling the frozen masts. Alexis felt tension coil between the two men, old bitter unresolved. She steadied her breath. Jonas, if you don't help me, innocent people might get hurt. Elliot's daughter has already been confronted. We don't have time. Jonas turned toward her slowly, studying her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. Then something shifted in his expression, not sympathy but recognition. You're the engineer, he murmured. The one with the conversion model. Alexis's stomach dropped. How do you know that, I read? Jonas said. Even when the world thinks I'm dead, your work is good, threatening, uncomfortably clean. He stepped back, paced once, then stopped abruptly. You need to understand something. The people you're up against aren't criminals. Criminals have motives, patterns, predictability. These people don't break laws. They rewrite them. Elliot's voice was sharp. Who leads them now? Jonas smiled faintly, a tired, bitter smile. Same man who led them when you walked away. Only hungrier now, more confident, more protected. Name, Elliot demanded. Jonas's smile faded. Marcus Voss. Elliot paled. Alexis looked between them. Is he the one who destroyed your brother? Jonas hesitated, then nodded. The truth sliced through the cold air. Elliot closed his eyes, jaw tight, breath shallow. He looked carved from stone. Jonas watched him with something like pity. You should have stayed out, Harper. You survived once. You won't survive twice. I'm not running, Elliot said. Not anymore. Then you'll die, Jonas replied. And so will she. Unless we stop them, Alexis said. Jonas turned to her again, studying her determination. You think intelligence and conviction are enough? They have reach you've never imagined. Marcus has federal ears whispering for him, banks laundering for him, corporations shielding him. He could erase you without leaving his office chair. Then help us expose him, she said. You tried once. You can try again. The wind howled against the pier, lifting Jonas's coat like dark wings. His face twisted with old pain. You think I don't want to, he whispered. You think I haven't dreamed of dragging him into the light. But every time someone tries, they vanish. Careers collapse. Families get hurt, or worse. Elliot stepped closer. Then don't do it for us. Do it for Daniel. Jonas froze. The lake groaned beneath the ice. The lantern flickered wildly. Alexis held her breath. Jonas looked away, shoulders stiffening, voice cracking at the edges. Daniel was good, he whispered. Better than you. Better than me. Marcus broke him because he could. Elliot's voice was low, steady. Then help me finish what he started. Jonas squeezed his eyes shut, wrestling with ghosts older than the storm. Finally he opened them. I can't give you everything, but I can point you to someone who can. Someone inside Marcus's circle. Someone who's scared enough to talk, but loyal enough to stay invisible. Alexis stepped closer. Jonas lifted a trembling hand and pointed toward a cluster of distant lights across the icy marina, an old maintenance shed half buried in snow. A figure stood inside the threshold, barely visible through the drifted white. Watching. Waiting. Him, Jonas said. He's been waiting for you. Alexis stared at the faint silhouette. Why? Because he knows what's coming, Jonas whispered, and he knows you're running out of time. Elliot turned toward the shed, breath coiling in the cold. Who is he? Jonas. Jonas's voice was almost lost in the wind. Someone Marcus thinks is loyal. Someone who isn't. Alexis felt her pulse hammer. His name Jonas looked at her with haunted eyes. Call him the archivist, he said, and pray he's still alive. Snow whipped sideways across the abandoned marina as Elliot and Alexis stepped off the pier, leaving Jonas behind in the dim glow of the lantern. The maintenance shed Jonas had pointed to was barely visible through the swirling storm, a squat, weather-beaten structure crouched near the shoreline. Its corrugated metal walls rattled with each violent gust. Alexis pulled her coat tight. Why would anyone wait for us out here? Elliot kept walking. Because Jonas wouldn't risk giving us a name unless there was no other way to pass it. You trust him? No, Elliot said. But I trust his fear. They reached the shed door. A faint sliver of warm light leaked from the bottom. Elliot raised a hand, paused, listened, then knocked twice. Silence. Then a latch slid open from the inside. The door cracked just wide enough for a man's face to appear thin, older eyes, sharp behind glasses, fogged from the cold. He looked at Elliot, first, a flicker of recognition passing through him, then at Alexis. Get in, he said. His voice was low, urgent. He shut the door behind them as soon as they stepped in. The interior was warmer than expected, heated by a portable propane unit. Tools lined the walls, shadows stretching in long, distorted shapes. The man moved to the window and closed the blinds before facing them fully. I go by the archivist because names are liabilities, he said. But you can call me Robert. Robert, what Alexis asked. Just Robert. He pointed to 2 wooden crates. Sit. Both of you. Elliot obeyed without hesitation. Alexis followed, though her nerves prickled. Robert stayed standing as if ready to bolt at the slightest noise. His clothing was plain dark thermal shirt, worn jeans, boots coated in snow, but something about him radiated quiet intelligence. A man used to hiding in plain sight. Jonas said you could help us, Elliot said. Robert snorted softly. Jonas says a lot of things. Some true, some convenient, some suicidal. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. But yes, he knew I'd eventually have to talk to someone. Might as well be you two. Alexis leaned forward. You worked for Marcus Voss. Robert's expression tightened. Worked for him? No, I survived near him. There's a difference. Elliot narrowed his eyes. What was your role? Robert hesitated, then answered. Data compiler, record keeper, cleaner. Alexis frowned. Cleaner. Not that kind, Robert said. I maintained the digital traces Marcus didn't want public, burned the ones that couldn't exist, catalogued the ones that were too valuable to destroy. Elliot exchanged a look with Alexis. You kept evidence. Robert didn't smile, but his voice warmed with bitter pride. I kept everything. Marcus thought I was wiping files. In reality, I redirected them, buried them in dead servers off-grid storage paper archives. Marcus will never know how much of his empire still exists because I saved it. Why, Alexis asked. If you hated what he was doing, I didn't hate him at first, Robert said quietly. I admired him. Brilliant man, ruthless mind. But then he changed, grew too confident, started seeing people as assets or obstacles. His gaze drifted toward the floor. I drew the line when an obstacle turned out to be a child. Elliot felt the breath leave his body. Whose child Robert didn't look up, a whistleblower's son. 10 years old. They didn't harm him. Not physically. but they scared him so deeply he couldn't speak for days. Marcus believed psychological pressure was cleaner, less traceable. Alexis felt cold crawl across her skin. "You quit. No one quits, Marcus Voss," Robert said. "But I left anyway. Vanished." Jonas helped. Elliot leaned forward. "If you have evidence, we can expose Marcus." Robert gave a sharp, humorless laugh. "Expose him? You don't expose someone who owns the shadows. Marcus's power isn't in documents or money. It's in leverage, networks, people who owe him favors they can never repay." "Then why talk to us at all?" Alexis demanded. Robert's eyes finally lifted to hers. "Because 2 weeks ago, Marcus started preparing for something large. A shift, a consolidation of influence. Your case, Ms. Monroe, is only a test run." Alexis stiffened. "A test run for what? To see how quickly he can dismantle a threat." Robert paced, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Marcus believes your energy model could destabilize global resource markets. He cannot let that happen. So he framed you, pushed allies to withdraw support, ensured your own attorney abandoned you." Alexis's anger surged, so he orchestrated everything. "Almost everything," Robert said. "There's still one thing he can't control." Elliot raised an eyebrow. "You?" "No," Robert said. "Her work, her mind. Marcus fears ideas. They can't be killed as easily as people." Alexis swallowed. "If you have proof, I do," Robert said. "But reaching it is dangerous. The files are stored in a location Marcus believes is compromised and therefore ignores. Ironically, that makes it safe if accessed correctly." He knelt beside a metal locker, removing a small dust-covered safe. The combination lock clicked softly beneath his fingers. Inside was an old external hard drive, dented, wrapped in weatherproof tape. He held it as reverently as a relic. "This contains communications contracts, covert meeting logs, and internal memos from Marcus's circle," Robert said. "Much of it predates digital tracking, hand-scanned documents, typed letters, signed agreements." Alexis felt hope flicker. Elliot felt dread. "Why didn't you take this to someone before?" Elliot asked. Robert's gaze hardened. "I did. Twice. Both times the evidence disappeared, and both times people died." Alexis felt her breath falter. "So what makes this time different?" Robert said. "You built something valuable enough that Marcus can't destroy it quietly. You've become a public figure, a narrative. Stories like yours have momentum. If the truth about Marcus piggybacks on your story, it becomes harder to bury." Footsteps crunched outside. All three froze. Robert's eyes darted to the window. "No one should be out here," he whispered. Elliot rose silently, his hand sliding to a metal wrench on the workbench. Alexis's pulse pounded. 3 shadows moved past the frosted glass. Then just as quickly they disappeared. Robert exhaled shakily. "They're scouts. Marcus sends them when he suspects a leak." Elliot's voice was taut. "We need to leave." "Too late," Robert said. "If scouts are here, the sweep team isn't far behind." He thrust the hard drive into Elliot's hands. "Take it. And listen carefully." His voice dropped to a fast whisper. "There is a second copy, hidden far from Chicago. If Marcus destroys one, the other survives. You need both to prove intent." Elliot shook his head. "We can't protect you here." Robert smiled sadly. "I've survived this long. I know how to disappear." The door shuddered, a knock soft, deliberate. Alexis stiffened. Robert's eyes went sharp. "Go. Now." Elliot grabbed Alexis's hand, pulling her toward the back door. Snow poured inside as he forced it open. "Come with us," Alexis begged. Robert shook his head. "I'll slow you down." Another knock. Harder this time. Robert whispered one final thing. Marcus Voss has a list of those who stand in his way. His gaze locked on Alexis. Your name moved to the top yesterday. Elliot pulled her into the storm. The wind swallowed Robert's final words. Behind them, the lantern flickered violently, as if the shed itself braced for what was about to come next. Snow swallowed their footsteps as Elliot dragged Alexis away from the shed, the hard drive pressed against his chest under his coat. The storm had grown vicious, biting through fabric and skin, turning the marina into a white labyrinth where every direction looked the same. Behind them, the shed door slammed open. A sharp burst of light cut through the storm. Voices followed low, clipped mail. Elliot tightened his grip on Alexis's hand. Go faster. She stumbled through the drifts, breath burning in her throat. Robert, he knew what he was doing, Elliot said. Look forward, not back. A crack echoed through the night. Something struck the snow inches from their feet. Alexis's eyes widened. That was a warning, Elliot said. For now. They reached the tree line, where a crooked wooden staircase descended toward a service road, half buried in snow. Elliot shoved Alexis ahead of him. Keep moving. What about the car? We're not going back to the car. He glanced over his shoulder. Shadowy figures moved through the storm, their outlines blurred but unmistakable. They were spreading out, sweeping the shoreline like wolves closing a hunt. Alexis's heart hammered. Where are we going? Anywhere but here. They slogged down the steps, slipping, catching themselves, fighting gravity and ice. The wind howled like a living thing. Halfway down, Alexis grabbed the railing, chest heaving. I can't see more than 10 feet, Good Elliot said. Neither can they. He reached the bottom first and waited for her, scanning the swirling snow. They needed cover, something, anything. Then he spotted it, a rusted maintenance tunnel, opening half hidden by branches. Old, unused, perfect. This way. He pulled her into the tunnel, just as another crack broke through the wind. A bullet sparked off the metal frame. Alexis nearly fell backward, but Elliot caught her and pressed her deeper inside. The darkness swallowed them. The tunnel was narrow and freezing, lined with pipes crusted in frost. The storm's howl became a muffled roar above their heads. Elliot placed a hand on her shoulder. Stay still. Don't talk. They waited. 1 minute. 2. Footsteps approached, soft crunches on snow-covered ground. A flashlight beam cut across the tunnel entrance. Alexis held her breath. Elliot didn't breathe at all. Tracks end here, a voice muttered. Another answered Harper's not stupid. They doubled back. Or they're in the tunnel. Silence. Then he wouldn't hide in an open pipe. Too exposed. Maybe he's desperate. A sigh. Split up. Sweep west. If we don't find them in 10 minutes, regroup at the shed. Footsteps retreated. Alexis didn't breathe until the last sound faded. Elliot exhaled slow, quiet control, returning to his voice. We move. Out there. Not far. Just enough to circle back toward the docks. But they'll be waiting. Not where we're going. He guided her through the tunnel until it ended at a metal grate. It was rusted old and barely clinging to its hinges. Elliot kicked it once, twice. The grate fell away silently into deep snow. They stepped out behind a row of derelict storage units. The shed where Robert waited was now a faint outline in the storm. A sudden burst of light flared through its small window. Alexis choked. "Elliot, don't look," he said. But she already had. The flash wasn't gunfire. It was a fireball brief, violent, devouring the shed before collapsing into darkness. The explosion hit them seconds later, a muted thump carried by the wind. Alexis staggered. Elliot caught her again, steadying her. Robert knew, he said quietly. He was trying to buy us time. He didn't have to die for us. He didn't die for us, Elliot said. He died because Marcus never forgives betrayal. Alexis pressed a hand against her mouth, shaking. We have to go to the police. No, Elliot said. Marcus has people everywhere. If we turn this over, now it disappears, and so do we. Then where do we go? Back to Jonas. What, why? We can't lead them to him. We're not leading anyone. We lost the tail in the tunnel. And Jonas has something we need. Elliot pulled the hard drive from inside his coat. This is only half the evidence. Without the second copy, Marcus can claim everything is fabricated. Jonas knows where the second copy is. He helped Robert hide it. Alexis wiped snow from her face. Where is it? Elliot hesitated. Somewhere even Marcus can't touch. But Jonas will only say it if he believes we can survive long enough to use it. They retraced their steps along the dock. The wind cut sideways, slicing through their coats. When they reached the end of the pier, Jonas was gone. The lantern still burned, swaying violently in the storm, but the boards around it were undisturbed. No footprints, no sign of struggle. Just an empty pier, Alexis whispered. Did they take him? Elliot shook his head. Jonas doesn't get taken. Then where? A voice drifted through the storm. You're early. They spun. Jonas stood behind a boat hoist, half hidden in shadow. Alive. Untouched it, watching them with the cool patience of a man who trusted in nothing, not even his own survival. Alexis nearly collapsed with relief. Jonas, we thought I know. He stepped forward. They weren't after me. Not tonight. Elliot frowned. They hit the shed. Jonas nodded. Robert knew this day was coming. He accepted it a long time ago. His eyes fell to the hard drive in Elliot's hand. So he gave it to you. He said you know where the second copy is. Elliot said. I do, Jonas replied. But reaching it is another problem. Where is it? Jonas glanced out at the frozen lake, as if expecting something to rise from beneath. Hidden in a place Marcus abandoned, a place he believes no longer exists. Alexis shivered. Where Jonas lifted his chin toward the storm-dark horizon. An old research facility, Northern Peninsula, closed after a scandal 10 years ago. Marcus used it before he built his empire, before he stopped pretending to be human. Elliot's breath thickened. He kept evidence there. He kept everything there, Jonas murmured. Early memos, prototype failures, illegal funding trails, names of the men who helped build the network, the kinds of documents that don't just destroy a man. They dismantle his entire world. Alexis stepped forward. Then we need to go there. Jonas shook his head. You don't understand. That facility isn't just offshore. It's off the map, and reaching it requires someone Marcus would never suspect. Who? Jonas looked directly at Elliot. His sister. The wind stopped. The storm went silent. Alexis felt her heart drop. Your sister Elliot's face was hollow-haunted. She's gone. Jonas's voice softened, not from compassion, but from shared memory. She disappeared after Daniel, but she didn't die, Harper. She changed her name, went underground, and she knows the way to the facility because she helped Robert hide the evidence. Alexis whispered. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Because finding her is harder than finding the truth itself, Jonas replied. And if Marcus realizes she's alive, he'll burn half the country to ash to reach her. Elliot closed his eyes, pain flickering across his features. She left because of me. She left because she had to, Jonas said. But she's the only one who can take you where you need to go. Alexis steadied her breath. Where is she now? Jonas glanced toward the storm again. Alaska. Alaska, Alexis repeated. Jonas nodded. A fishing town with more snow machines than people. Last place on Earth, Marcus's reach feels short. Elliot stared at Jonas, voice barely a whisper. Why would she help us? Jonas placed a hand on Elliot's shoulder. Because she doesn't know Daniel died. And you're the only one who can tell her. Snow swirled around them in heavy, relentless sheets. Alexis felt it deep in her bones. The journey ahead wouldn't just uncover Marcus's secrets. It would rip open Elliot's past. And somewhere in the frozen north, a woman carrying the truth waited unaware that everything she believed was about to change. The flight to Alaska, left at dawn, lifting them out of Chicago's steel-gray sky and into a world of white horizon and thin, brittle sunlight. Alexis sat by the window watching clouds fold beneath the plane like layers of cotton pressed tight against the earth. Elliot sat beside her silent, his hands clasped so tightly she could see the tension running through his arms. Jonas occupied the seat across the aisle, leaning back with eyes half closed, though Alexis suspected he was listening to every movement, every word spoken by the passengers around them. The cabin hummed with engine noise and muffled conversations. A child somewhere behind them kicked the seat. A man coughed loudly into his jacket. But despite the normalcy, the air around their row felt heavy with everything unsaid. You don't have to tell her, Alexis said, gently turning from the window to Elliot. Not immediately. I do, he said, eyes fixed on the seat ahead. She deserved the truth 10 years ago. His voice carried a tremor that pierced her. She rested a hand lightly on his arm. You didn't fail your brother. Elliot didn't speak. He simply shook his head, as though disagreement was easier than admitting how deeply the regret lived inside him. Jonas opened one eye. Telling her is the only way she'll help us. Elliot's jaw tensed. I know. The plane descended over the frozen coast, revealing jagged cliffs and a restless dark blue sea cracking against the land like shattered glass. The runway in the small fishing town was little more than a long strip carved into snow. Harsh wind buffeted the plane, shaking it until Alexis grabbed Elliot's arm without thinking. He steadied her with a simple nod. No reassurance, just presence. They disembarked into icy air sharp enough to sting their lungs. The town loomed ahead, tiny houses huddled together, docks lined with boats crusted in frost smoke, rising from chimneys, as if clinging to warmth they didn't trust the sky to provide. Jonas walked ahead, shoulders hunched, coat whipping in the wind. She lives near the lighthouse, he said. Off the main road. Keeps to herself. Doesn't talk to locals. Alexis followed, boots crunching through packed snow, each step deliberate. Elliot lagged just behind Jonas, as if resisting the gravity pulling him toward the woman who had vanished without goodbye. They crossed a wooden footbridge draped in icicles. The lighthouse appeared in the distance, tall and solitary, its beacon off for the day, but etched with rust and history. Smoke curled from the chimney of a small cottage at its base. Jonas slowed his pace. This is it. Elliot stopped completely. Snow settled on his shoulders, melting into dark spots on his coat. Alexis touched his hand. You're not alone. He swallowed hard and nodded once. Jonas knocked. The door opened halfway, held by a chain, revealing a woman with wary blue eyes and weathered features. Her hair, long and dark, streaked with silver, framed her face like a curtain she no longer bothered to maintain. She had the look of someone who had built walls out of necessity, not preference. Her eyes drifted over Jonas with annoyance, then to Alexis with confusion, and finally to Elliot. The moment she saw him, her breath hitched. Elliot. The chain unlatched. The door swung wide. She stood straighter, gripping the frame as if to steady herself. "I thought you were dead." Elliot stepped forward slowly, as though approaching something fragile. "I'm not," her voice cracked. "I waited, for months, then years, I know." Jonas cleared his throat. "Mara, we need to come inside." She hesitated, evaluating the group, then stepped back. "Fine." But not a word until the doors shut. They entered the cottage. Warmth enveloped them immediately, carrying the scent of burning wood, old books, and something cooking on the stove. Mara locked 2 bolts behind them, then turned with a guarded expression. "Why are you here?" Elliot reached for her hands. "We need your help." She pulled her hands back. Help with what? Alexis stepped forward, with exposing Marcus Voss. Mara's eyes changed instantly, fear, memory, anger, flashing through them like a series of storms. "I don't speak that name." "Not in this house." Jonas softened his voice. "You hid the evidence. The backup copy. Robert is dead." Mara closed her eyes, her shoulders slumped. "I knew it would end that way for him." Elliot reached again this time, not for her hands, but for her attention. "Mara, we need the location. Alexis's work is under attack. Marcus is moving against her the way he moved against Daniel." Mara froze at the name. "Don't. You need to hear it." She shook her head. "No. I left to protect myself. To protect you." Daniel was gone. There was nothing left. Elliot's voice broke. "He's dead, Mara." The cottage went still. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Mara stared at him, her face unraveling, inch by inch. "No," she whispered. "No, you don't get to say that. You don't know." "He drove to the lake," Elliot said. "They framed him. They broke him. And I wasn't there when he needed me." Mara staggered backward, gripping the table. The truth moved through her like a physical blow. Alexis stepped toward her, instinctively offering support. Mara shook her off. "You should have stopped him," she whispered to Elliot. "You should have saved him." Elliot nodded, accepting the blame like a weight he had carried for years. "I know." Tears filled Mara's eyes but didn't fall. She inhaled slowly, shakily. "If I help you, if I give you what Robert and I hid, Marcus will come for all of you." Jonas responded with a bitter smile. "He already has." Mara turned to Alexis, studying her closely. "Why fight someone you can't beat?" Alexis didn't flinch. "Because I won't let him destroy my work, and I won't let him destroy anyone else's life." Those words hit something deep in Mara. She paced once, twice, then stopped abruptly. "The facility is real," she said. "It's buried under an old research station near the northern cliffs. The entrance is concealed beneath an abandoned fuel depot. You'll need a code." Jonas leaned forward. "Do you have it?" Mara nodded. "And something else?" She moved to a small wooden chest near the window. Inside lay an old notebook, edges yellowed pages filled with diagrams and coordinates. She handed it to Elliot. "Daniel trusted me with this before he disappeared. He said if anything ever happened to him, you would know when to use it." Elliot opened the notebook, his brother's handwriting, slanted, precise, alive. His breath shuddered. Mara touched his arm gently. "He never blamed you." Elliot closed the notebook carefully, as if holding a part of Daniel that had finally come home. Jonas spoke quietly. "We leave today." "Marcus won't ignore the storm signals forever," Alexis agreed. "The sooner we reach that facility, the safer everyone becomes." Mara looked at her. "Safe isn't a word you'll know for a long time, but you have a chance. And chance is more than most people who crossed Marcus ever got." She retrieved her coat. "I'm coming with you." Elliot blinked. "Mara don't," she said. This is my fight too. Outside wind tore at the eaves, shaking loose ice like shattered glass. Alexis tightened her scarf, watching Elliot and Mara stand side by side for the first time in a decade. They looked like two fragments of a broken story being forced together again, uneven, painful, but necessary. Jonas opened the door, the storm screaming back into the cottage. The journey ahead would take them deep into a place built on secrets, but now at least they had truth on their side. And truth had teeth. If you want to see how far this fight goes, stay with us, like the story, subscribe for the next chapter, and comment the 3 words, "Stand with truth."